Really? It's gonna be raining. Ooh. Where's the case of it?
Yeah, whatever.
Nice. You guys aren't seeing all these things of You also brought notes and stuff?
Yeah.
What notes are these?
This
is from the
my memory.
Oh, you still?
I won't lie, the document you guys sent was very deep. I was like, woo.
Yeah.
Did we send a document?
Yeah, in the group.
The document that was sent to us.
We sent documents to people.
No, that was a serious document. Really? Very serious.
Very reflective question.
Very serious things.
Think about my life a bit.
I just pray for that wisdom to be able to identify things that I shouldn't be speaking about, because I'm an open book. I'll just share it all.
You gonna be alright?
I think so.
I'll manage. Lee is smart.
Nick, Siobhan, Ronzo, you guys ready? Let me know. Ready? All right. Hey, what's happening, everybody? Welcome to yet again another week of Stuff We Didn't Say on Sunday. This whole series is focusing on work, and today we're looking at the law profession. I personally, for all kinds of selfish reasons, have been looking forward to this one. They can kick me out of all the other podcasts, not this one, because I got questions of my own. I am with good friends, Lee with me and Fundile with me, who are in this space, and really grateful that you guys could make it and drop all your legal cases to be a part of this podcast. How are you doing, first of all?
Good. I think looking forward to just taking some time off soon. But otherwise, really good. Yeah.
Good.
No, very well. I'm looking forward to this. I've never been in this. This is scarier than being in court.
No way. No way. How is it to be in court?
It's daunting for people who don't participate in that space.
Yeah.
But then when you are preparing witnesses, I'll always tell them, when you are having a meeting in your boardroom and you guys are sharing things or whatever you're discussing, it's pretty much the same. It's just that there's a lot of wood and the chairperson of the meeting sits much higher than you. So it's very scary, and we are dressed in weird garments.
Yes.
So that may intimidate you, but it's really just a meeting where we are all just discussing what has happened here.
So it's probably one of the things about the law industry that I kind of enjoy, because the fact that you are dressed in weird garments is very much like the profession I'm in, where, the cloth is very representative of a function, right? And so I constantly wonder how lawyers and attorneys, and I don't know all these terms, and maybe later we'll get into it, how you actually view certain ideas and truths of the scriptures because of what you experience. So we just spoke about court right now. You've been in a court, you've stood before judges. Before I even dive into that profession, how does having been in that kind of environment impact your understanding of there is a righteous judge that we will one day stand on his court and we will account, and yet, someone would have paid the sacrifice for us. I've always wondered, someone in that kind of profession, how do you begin to break down and understand that, because you're so close to that experience?
I suppose that something that you never go into court unprepared. Well, you would hope. I've seen a few unprepared opponents in my years, but I think that where we are standing as the person speaking to the judge, you go there prepared. So it's quite similar to the way we live our lives as Christian. We're all working towards, the eternal judgment or the eternal day, where we speak about how we've lived our lives out. We set out certain facts in a courtroom that have our truths, hopefully, and we represent that to the judge. And I think it's the same way we represent ourselves to Christ at the end of the day, and to those around us as well. Because another thing, I think that when you are in court, there's silence. right?
Wow.
Everyone is listening to what you are saying. It's not like, we see on Suits or anything. You actually have the person who is standing up, has the authority to speak. And I think that perhaps another metaphor in that circumstance is when we're given that authority to speak in a courtroom, in our general lives as Christians, we have that authority. How are we exercising that authority to represent Christ to those around us?
Listen, so many similarities. So how do you even deal with the fact that the Bible says the Holy Spirit is our advocate? I mean, because who can closely relate to that? And then on top of it, the enemy is the accuser. It's used in court language. The enemy is the accuser, and Jesus will fundamentally also stand as your advocate in that court, but also as, and then it's using kind of priest terms, as your sacrifice. How, again, in your mind, how do you even begin to process that idea, knowing that there is a perfect advocate in the Holy Spirit and in Christ for you, being who you are and doing what you do?
You take on a very different role when you are a lawyer than when you are a person who is relying on the power of Christ. I mean, there's safety in those robes that we wear. Lee spoke about the authority that we carry. When you are there as someone being represented, again, I said I should have the wisdom on what I should share. In my younger days, I found myself on the other side where I had to be the one who is represented. It was a speeding thing. I was driving to the Eastern Cape in a small little town.
That makes sense.
In a small little town, in the early hours of the morning, I was driving at 90 kilometers an hour, but they said it's 60, and the guy decided to arrest me.
Wow. Were you a lawyer at this time?
I was a candidate attorney. I was not an attorney yet at the time. But I had to attend a court hearing, and I had been in court with seniors. I knew the environment, but I had to take on a different seat when I was now attending the hearing. Fortunately, it was dropped on that first hearing. But sitting in that position, that's where you understood the vulnerability of a person who needs representation. And I think it's those people who that question should go to. A person who understands the vulnerability that comes with being in a court environment, being represented. For a lot of people, that's your life, life at stake. This means a lot to you. For us lawyers, it's another matter. It's an interesting legal debate. You get out of it and you move on to the next brief.
Sure.
You give your all to this one and you move on to the next brief.
So it's interesting. You mentioned that, it's different being on the other side of the law. And we're finding more and more people of the law being on the other side of the law everywhere. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether it's for supposed romance or it's for corruption. Yes. It begs a question for me as people who are in the law space and people of faith. Like, what do you think God is doing when you think about the nation and you through the lens of your work and some of the cases you're doing and the cases your friends are in and what you're watching through your lens? What would you say God is doing in our nation, whether it's a warning for us or an encouragement for us?
Well, I think that definitely what is coming out is we are reaching a time in our nation where more people are speaking truth to power. More people are standing up against the corruption that lives around them. They are really getting a sense of tiredness. People are broken. People are exhausted by what's going on around them. And I think that, God is really close to the brokenhearted. And so I think we are, as a nation, rising up and moving towards the revelation of truth. And hopefully we put our trust in unfortunately broken governments, broken society, broken systems. And where we need to step in as Christians is to be supportive, and where we can step in to assist or be good corporate citizens, or good, whether it be just personal people in the relationships around us. I think that is where God is really calling us to rise up in the situations. And I also think in our nation now, I think a lot more people are open to listening to different viewpoints all around. And I think that through that, we have people that are being more open to coming to Christ. Being more open to speaking about Christ in workplaces. I know I've seen that in my own personal spaces that I operate in. It's not so much anymore a position where people are hiding behind, putting their light behind the bushel. People are really coming and speaking up a lot more about the things that are closer to them. I think that's also what COVID taught people, is that the things that are important to you, you can speak about. You can make those clear. And I think that sort of environment also really helps people to come forth with their faith.
That is great. And by the way, you might be watching and recognizing this face and this voice from radio and TV. you know when they have those adverts of legal wise, yes. Lawyers popular. She probably doesn't work there, but she be popular. Get a number and get to this company right here. Bro, same question for you. And you and I have had kind of similar chats over the last little while as we've been hanging out. But what's your thinking when you think, what's God doing in the nation?
Through the law.
Yeah.
The law is a powerful tool. It basically regulates how we all live. It strips all of us of the power or the autonomy to solve things the way we would want. You owe me money and you're not paying me. There are things I could do.
Yeah.
But the law says, no, let's regulate the way you resolve those disputes. Let's go in that wooden room with the man sitting above and debate the issue.
Yeah.
So I think now, particularly, people are taking interest in the law as a tool, either to expose things that are wrong with society. They are using the law to shine a light on things that are going wrong in our society, to speak truth to power. We get, perhaps historically, you get, I think they call them positivist lawyers, where this is the law, we just read it from a book, you are not allowed to do that. But then since we got a constitution, which is a living document that espouses values that we live today. It says you don't just read the law as it is, but you get to argue how it ought to be. Is this in line with the values that we carry as South Africans, for instance? And so people are starting to use that. A lot of changes that we are seeing in society are happening through the law. You find politicians are no longer debating things in parliament and voting on it, and if you lose, you've lost. They lose a vote in parliament, they are in chambers tomorrow asking us to take a matter to court. So people are using the law, are recognizing the power of the law. And for us to give expression to those values that we have as society, we need to understand how the law works, and people are doing that. We're seeing that a lot more and more.
You mentioned the Constitution. A very, currently popular advocate has expressed that they believe that the Constitution is not sufficient and that it actually should be adjusted or even changed to better reflect kind of where we are as a nation. I don't know what your views are, nor do I know if you're allowed to even say anything about that. But I found that interesting, that there's a whole bunch of people who actually feel that our Constitution as it stands is insufficient to meet the needs of the nation. Your thoughts on that?
As Fundile said, the Constitution is really a tool or a lens that we use to see our current legal position, right? So it really depends per scenario what we need to do with our Constitution. I think it might be that because we are 30 years post-democracy, a lot of people are feeling frustrated. We've got this nice, shiny Constitution, but we don't necessarily see it in action in a lot of the scenarios. People are still struggling 30 years post-democracy. And in that lens, I can understand perhaps with argument. But at the same time, there have been really amazing wins through our courts because of the Constitution. And one example just recently is, in the space that I operate in, is how the law has been changed to reflect the different family systems in parental rights and parental leave. And that came about because of looking at the Constitution and looking at what dignity means in a family setup, what equality looks like in a family setup. So I think it really, very lawyer term to say on a case-by-case basis.
Yes.
I don't think you can, it's not one size fits all. I think that if there's a specific scenario where our Constitution is ineffective in a particular scenario, sure, let's look at how we can develop the Constitution or change the Constitution. Obviously, there's all sorts of legal provisions on how that happens. But there's also really amazing stories that could not have happened had our Constitution not been structured the way it
currently is. Yeah, man, that's interesting. So many questions on that, but I want to put you on the spot. Your thoughts on the Constitution? And by the way, I wish they changed it. I got 3 kids. I'm not going to have any more. I missed my chance to have a whole lot of paternity leave. So I'm slightly sad about that. Bro?
I said a little earlier that the Constitution is a living document.
Fair.
It exists to always give expression to what society holds dear to its heart. I think it's an unfair criticism when people say this Constitution, it doesn't do enough or it doesn't provide for enough. The Constitution, I think Lee said now, is a lens through which we look at society. It won't necessarily be an all-encompassing document that says it carries every single right and entitlement that people are supposed to have. But in working towards the society that we are building, it says that these are the values that we should do so in. That's why it says any law that is created that is inconsistent with this document is unlawful. It must be struck down. So it tells us, I wish I had the Constitution because I'd like people to read like the preamble. Which gives the value system that it is establishing. And then we go into the Bill of Rights, where it talks about people having the right to life, the right to dignity, the right to equality, the right, and then it goes on and on. So if we are measuring everything we do in society, because that's just the supreme law, and then there are several laws that come under that to give expression to that. When we say people have the right to fair labor practices, your labor lawyers will have the Labor Relations Act, which then goes down into the nitty-gritties of what that right actually entails. And if you have any law which says only mothers can have leave when children are born, we go back and measure it against the Constitution and determine, what does this say about the right to equality? What does it say about the rights of fathers, single fathers who've adopted children?
So you would say you said the Constitution is like a lens.
Yes.
Give an equivalent what's the word? An equivalent definition for the law in relation to the lens. So if the Constitution is the lens, you would say the law is, because what I'm hearing both of you say is this law is applied within a particular framework.
Yes.
And within a particular lens. And that lens is the Constitution. But what then does it make the law for maybe some of us who are not familiar with this space and industry? That makes sense what I'm asking?
Yeah. I suppose the law is, if the Constitution is the lens, perhaps the specific laws that exist are like picture frames, that you have to see whether that picture that's now been taken against that particular lens makes sense. And if not, you take another picture and you replace it.
Okay.
So
you're not changing the lens.
Yeah.
Okay.
If the picture comes out a little bit blurry, if, it's not, this person looks a little bit different to that person through that picture. If this one is not measuring up to that person in that picture, and in that frame, in that context, you then get the Constitution, look through that lens of the Constitution and replace the picture and see how best you can fit that law within that lens and that frame.
So
That's interesting.
You'll find that in the text of the Constitution, it will give people a right to just administrative action.
Sure.
Meaning the way that you interact with the government. It has to be fair when they make decisions not to grant you a passport or not to, you have the right to just administrative action. But then within the text of the Constitution, it will say the government or parliament must enact legislation to give effect to this right. So that's the lens, right? In terms of the lens, I have the right to be treated fairly by the decisions that government makes, but then government must have an act that gives expression to this, to that freedom. And so once it has, now we have an act, it's called the Promotion of Administrative Justice
Act.
Yeah, we call it PAJA. That's
why we couldn't remember the name.
We all just call it PAJA. We have PAJA. It gives expression to that right. Now, whenever I have to interact with PAJA, and in a specific case, I find that the way that this right is formulated or this law is formulated, I don't think it's consistent with what the Constitution has in mind. With that lens, it's irreconcilable with that lens I'm talking about. We then go to court and say this must be declared unconstitutional, and then you must direct government to go and change this law.
Fair enough. So it's like the picture I'm having as a novice, I guess, in this space is you know when in those like movies they have like those Polaroids, but you'll go into a room that's like pink or blue, and then you have to put on these lenses, and then all these Polaroids, and you have to look at the picture. And, so it's almost like the picture of an advocate being one who gets into this room with these lenses, and looking at these things and trying to assess.
That's precisely.
Does this actually work? Now, if that's the case, where on earth are we failing? If the Constitution is not the issue, and the laws actually can be engaged in the court based on our Constitution, where's the breakdown? When we're thinking of the flow of a Constitution, laws that can actually be evaluated and engaged, and then you think of a broken system, where are we going wrong?
At the end of it all, there are people involved.
Sure, I just wanted you to name specific people. But let's move on. You might as well.
No. I'm not naming any specific people. All I'm getting it to is that there are human beings involved. We can speak about beautiful concepts and speak poetry about these things, about how beautiful our Constitution is. It creates a beautiful lens. Yes, it does. But there are three arms of government. We have the legislature. Those are the people who sit and craft these laws and write down this beautiful poetry. You have the right to do this. And then you have the executive. that's the president and the cabinet, and they give expression to that. They execute these laws, creating policies that give life to all of this. And then you have the judiciary, yes, as we just interpret, no, you are right, you are reading this wrong. All of us play a role in the system. How we interpret these laws, the cases that we bring before the courts, asking the courts to interpret this legislation in a particular way. There'll be fights about the Constitution saying people have the right to access to housing, for instance. People debate about, does that mean you just have access, or does it mean I have a right to be given a house?
Sure.
There are people who are conservative in their interpretation that say, no, it's a very constrained right.
Yeah.
It means you can only have access to housing. We can't do anything that blocks you from getting a house. Others will say, no, this must be interpreted wider to say that there's a responsibility on government to ensure that people get housing. So that's people involved. And then a particular interpretation will be upheld by the lawyers. But similarly, government will execute or they won't execute, even though that right is there.
Regardless.
Yeah.
Man, I can't help but see so many similarities between your industry and the church. It's wild. Anyway, it's crazy. And another one that actually I would throw out is, how does AI impact the current law space? Because right now, everybody be trying to be a lawyer in these streets by just saying, dear AI, think like a lawyer for me.
Yes.
I don't know. Is it impacting? How's it playing out?
So, I mean, I don't know about Fundili. I know there's been at least 2 cases that have gone through our courts with fictitious AI made up case laws that didn't exist. So that aside, I think that we're really all having to adapt to what it means to be an attorney or an advocate in this current digital age. Where I work, we've been putting a lot of focus on how do we become better lawyers through using AI. And what does that look like? What does that mean? And how to really not to get left behind.
Yeah.
But I don't think that AI will ever 100% replace lawyers. I might be naive in my thinking, but I think that the human element in every scenario really is important, because there's some certain nuances, even when I've used AI tools, legal AI tools, that I've come across and be like, maybe I wouldn't do it this way, or I wouldn't think that way. I have a different thought. It doesn't necessarily think practically about, because a lot of these AI tools are not developed in South Africa, what are the specific circumstances? What is the system we exist in? What is the system that relates to the circumstances of our country as a whole? So AI definitely is something that's coming up, and we have to be ready to adapt. But also, again, in the space that I operate in, it's just about the responsible use of AI.
Yeah.
Especially
Versus the non-use.
Yes, especially when it comes to employees, and just being responsible in how you still have to execute your work.
Yeah.
You still have to show up regardless of AI helping you. And again, like I said, I'm not a techie. I'm learning, I'm getting used to these systems, but I think that's where I see it.
Both of you have very demanding lives. And I mean, the moment we finish this, you running straight down to church, leading worship on Sunday, and you've been serving the worship team as well, Lee. When I think of your lives and the demand and the fact that right now we could be sitting here and something actually has to be dropped on your lap. You know, we were actually supposed to have a 4th person here. If you wouldn't mind just putting a picture, we'll send you a picture. We'll send a picture of Deb just to give her a shout out. You know, she just got landed. What do you call it? An urgent,
urgent application.
She just got landed an urgent application. You know, so put a picture up here. Deb, sorry that you're not here. But you all have kids, you know, you've got families. I said this earlier. Do you know how to say no? And are you allowed to say no? And I'm not saying do you know how to say no in a derogatory sense.
Yeah.
But it almost feels like you can't start in this industry by saying no, and it gets trained in you. And so, how do you navigate that dynamic, because you've got certain lines that are not just relational, but your faith encourages you towards those certain lines. So how do you navigate it? I mean, you're getting gray hairs, you're losing hair right now.
Look, yeah, it's a very important question. I don't downplay it, saying no, and I think it's something that should be spoken about more in legal circles. It's a point of privilege to be able to say no. When Deb's message came through that she's in an urgent application, I was sharing that as a general principle, I don't take urgent applications. They take over your life in an unbelievable way. It can come now, it can come in the early evening, and suddenly your life turns upside down. You need to work around the clock. You need to, everything that you were busy with has to take a back seat during that time, including family, everything. It takes a lot out of you. But having said that, when you're asking, do you say no? Are you able to say no? The circumstances of an individual say a lot. As a young lawyer starting out, and now let me speak from the perspective of advocates. As an advocate, I'm not employed by anybody. I don't have the guarantee of a salary coming this month or next month. I rely on the briefs that attorneys send my way. So when an attorney phones and says, I have an urgent application, in 2 days' time I have to be in court, this presents a whole lot of opportunity, particularly someone I have never worked with before. Oh, this is an opportunity to meet someone new and expand my network. Let me take it, even if I don't have the capacity. I have to say yes to a lot. And then maybe as time goes on, you are able to start building a bit of boundary line, because you are sort of out there enough. Then you can start to say, no, I don't have the capacity. No, as a general principle, I don't do this type of work. But as I say, it's a point of privilege. It's not something that is open to most people. You have to work, and people would say, that's a toxic way of looking at it. It mental health matters. But the reality of what our profession is that it's an unequal space. There are people who get in there and just fly. There are others who really have to wait it out and try and take every opportunity that comes. No is not something that comes very easily to someone in those circumstances. And then so the burnout and the gray hairs and the hair loss and it all comes with it all comes with that.
I tell you. Similar, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think perhaps from a lens of an attorney, there with the term lens again, but from the perspective of an attorney, it's one of our biggest KPIs is this thing called a budget. So you have this target that is set at the beginning of every year, and that is what you need to work towards. It determines things like your salary increases, your promotion opportunities, and it's usually this big scary number. So again, saying no for an attorney in those circumstances is also incredibly difficult, because if you say no, they're just going to find someone else who's going to do the work. And what I find a lot as well now is a lot of clients are pressed in terms of budget requirements, and people are trying to rely less on lawyers, but our budget still remains. So in those circumstances, to say no, when you know you have this target that is there, it's not a moving target, it's there all the time. It's sitting on your neck, it's sitting on your back every single time. It's very difficult to say no. But I think that I've become a little bit better in terms of knowing when I need to stop and when I need to rest. And that is in two parts. One, firstly, through the pandemic and actually realizing those things that are actually important and meaningful and bring meaning to my life.
Yeah.
And then secondly, just having kids, man. Like, I don't want to be that mom who's not present for their kids. And I think that a lot of workplaces are a little bit more understanding of the flexibility, hybrid working, flexible working hours and arrangements. But still saying no for whether it be an attorney or an advocate, like Fundile correctly says, it's really a matter of privilege. If I'm not meeting my target, I can't say no to work,
I can't.
no matter how many things I have on my desk at that time.
So what leads me to my next point, and I'm sure the guys recording are like, end this episode. I got way too many questions for y'all. Is that also means, not just because of the way your industry is famed, where things are put before you regardless, right? But also the demand and the demand that must be met, is that surely there are times where I have to advocate or be an attorney for someone I either don't like, I
don't know where you're going with this.
I don't know.
Right, let's
I
hear you
want
out.
to look there. Someone I either don't like or whose belief system is profoundly way different from mine, or maybe someone that legally I can't really say I think I killed the boy. So how do let's be fair. Even the girls are guilty at times. Boys and girls guilty. How? What do you do? Help me navigate then how you walk that line where boom, here's a case. I don't agree with what this person has done. You know, belief is far, but also just the reality of my Noah says, this person. If you've ever had those cases.
I think maybe one thing that needs to be understood within the context we operate in as attorneys and advocates is that we have a duty to act in the best interest of our clients. Yes. But we also have an ethical obligation as officers of the court. And before we get even to where we come in as in our Christian belief system, is that when those two things clash, when something is not in your client's best interest, or where your client requires you to do something which would put you in breach of your ethical obligations, your ethical obligations hold firm. Those are the things that need to be first and foremost. And then I think to take it a step further when it comes to we have an ethical obligation, but then you also have your belief system and your morality. And your morality is something that, for me, is the overarching thing that makes me how I operate as an attorney.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that I can deny someone the right to justice because I have a different belief system to them.
Yeah.
I think I still have an obligation to assist that person, provided that it doesn't clash with my ethical obligations. So I don't know if I'm making sense.
It's making perfect sense.
So I can't necessarily impose my moral belief system on every matter that I am in. But at the same time, I have to do things that I'm going to be able to stand before the Lord one day and say, listen, you and I, we're good, but at the same time, you still have to act in your client's best interest.
So Fundile and I actually had this discussion outside a police station. We shall move on swiftly. But he said something similar, and I was anticipating you to say something similar, because I totally agree with that point. But I also actually believe it is the Christian thing to do. I think sometimes when I'm hearing people engage as attorneys, it almost feels like the world of faith, of which we're all part of, calls them to compromise their ethical responsibility. And I just don't know if that's true. Right? And I appreciate you drawing a distinction between the two, but also being very clear in terms of what you are legally required to do by, I'll use the word, the state, and to choose to not represent somebody because they don't have similar belief systems. I would be troubled by that personally. It's interesting. I think the scriptures talk about a Christ who dies for those who actually don't agree, don't like him, don't, there's something he's overtly doing, not necessarily for the ones who said, I will follow, but the ones who are actually saying, there's no way I'm going to follow. But he still lays his life down. So I'm sure people would disagree with that. And maybe people in my own profession looking forward to that discussion with them. But you had some thoughts on this as well that I found helpful. Do you want to add anything to this point? I don't know if I'm making sense. I'm trying to.
Yeah. Look, in my own practice, my colleagues laugh at me a lot because I somehow work a lot with the so-called bad guys in society's eyes, political leaders, political parties, and even this big thing that's going on with the police right now. And that kind of question will arise, even from the colleagues that understand what we as advocates call the cab rank rule. Comes from Europe, that the concept that when you get outside the airport, you get into a cab, the cab driver is supposed to just go, not look back what color your skin is, what your values are. The cab driver is just supposed to take the person who comes in and goes. So we have the same principle that you get a brief, subject to a few exceptions, you must just drive and take the client. If we are speaking about me and my beliefs, my view is always that the however egregious the accusations against a person, or however I view what the person has supposedly done, the law is there for them too. Even the promises in scripture are there for them too. When we are talking about for the plans you have for me, what's
Jeremiah
29:11.
Yeah, they proclaim those promises too. Doesn't mean they won't have to face consequences for what they're doing, but God is still there for them too. And if He is sending me to be the advocate as the Holy Spirit for them, that's the responsibility I have. That doesn't mean I will compromise anything that I have as a responsibility to the courts, to the law, to the country. But if the law favors this person, because unfortunately justice sometimes may mean the bad guy has to win this case, not what we have thought, this person is terrible, they must be cast out of society. So long as we can speak about the cab rank rule, and maybe people would disagree with me, but the reality is people find ways of escaping cases that they do not want to be part of. When I speak about this police thing that's going on, I know of many clients who are struggling to get advocates because people don't want to touch their cases. Like, no, I'm not going to be part of that. I'm not available, or whatever the case is. It's only because it's for them, they are struggling with something a lot of the time. So, but I find that it doesn't giving everyone the right to representation that all of us have. It doesn't mean I am acting against Christ, acting against values of the law, anything like that.
Man, that's great. We're going to land it. I don't even know how long it has been. When you say 3, do you mean 3
I
hours
was
or 3
wondering.
minutes?
I was
3 more minutes? No, wait.
so it's 3 minutes.
Listen, let me ask another one.
It's been 3 hours. Oh my God.
Well, I've got another question, but before I ask it, maybe you guys have maybe a question for each other, and if you do, I want to give you room for that, or a thought you want to add that you feel like maybe is important for people who might be in that space, or important for people who want to understand that space. So let me just give you room before I ask my question, if there's anything you want to add.
The profession is misunderstood. Perhaps in the 1 minute, I can just clarify two things.
Go for two.
Lawyers are liars. How do you guys go to court and you lie so much for that? Is absolutely not what we do. Sure. If you lie, that is the end of your career. If you tell a lie, even if she spoke about the hallucinations from AI, where AI won't say, I don't know. It'll give you a fake case. So people put those things in documents. Those people get into so much trouble because that's dishonesty. Wow. If you are putting in a case and you're saying, no, there are other courts who agree with my point, that's a lie.
It's a lie.
Yeah. So we do not lie. We work within what the law affords our client to say it favors them in this respect. So we will never lie. The other, people always will say, Lee will say, I'm an attorney. What's the difference between a lawyer and an attorney and an advocate?
Please.
All of us are lawyers. Anyone who is in the practice of law is a lawyer, judge, advocate, attorney. Attorneys and advocates, we are all members of the same team. We just have different responsibilities. When you have a case, the first person you'll go to is Lee as your attorney. She will give you all the advice you need and write letters and try and settle with whoever you're fighting with. There comes a point where a decision must then be made. It goes before a judge. That's when you bring an advocate in. An advocate is the person who packages all of this work that you guys have been doing.
Amazing.
And presents it before a judge in a way to say that I'm persuading you to find in favor of the person I'm representing.
That's so good.
That's the distinction between the roles. So I thought, let me just clarify at least one or two things about lawyers.
Oh, so again, similarity. I did a video before this because we're doing a preaching training coming up with Every Nation Joburg pastors. And the next one is on what we call artistry, which is about how to deliver a sermon. This weekend, we did a weekend on, past weekend, on archaeology, which is about how do you study the text deeply and dig the gold from the text. Attorneys, they go and study the text from what I'm getting from you, right? It's a similar thing. It's like I almost have to come to the text the way that an attorney will come to an issue. I'm unpacking, I'm writing, I'm doing arguments, etc. But come Sunday, I'm before a court. I better know how to take everything that I just put together and be able to package it in a way that a judge can go, no, innocent boy. You know what I mean? And literally that is the story of the preacher.
That is precisely it.
And arguably why they say that every Sunday for a preacher is like a master's level, I don't want to say dissertation, but assignment that you have to present, you know. So it's just amazing to me, some of the similarities. Thoughts or ideas or anything you feel like might be missing in this conversation that would be helpful to people in law, people who don't know about the law?
I think that something that I think that a lot because I'm always thinking, apparently.
It's because you're always on a podcast and always on TV.
So for me, the busyness of life, especially in the profession that we are in, you sometimes have to fit things in. And I think that faith has perhaps been one of those things that have sometimes been the last thing on my list, doing my devotion, praying. And It's when we started in our context in Every Nation, Bryanston, speaking about rhythms of rest and doing, your rhythms of biblical teaching or sitting in front of your word. It's really important, no matter how busy you are, to make space, to make room and invite Christ into every situation. I mean, I'm not as confident.
That can't be downplayed. That's so important what you're saying. Please continue.
I'm not as confident as Fundile is, and I'm not as experienced as he is in court. So anytime I need to put on those robes and go and present a case to a judge in the labor court, I'll always be like, Lord, please help me. Because if a question comes here, left of field, I'm going to need the Holy Spirit to intervene here. Because you might have the knowledge, you might have your own wisdom, but there's certain things that can only come from God. Every situation, even just sometimes I found myself in rooms where I'm just like, Lord, how did I get here? And it's really not because of myself and the knowledge that I have or the favor that I have had in certain situations. It's really, I cannot say that it's been from me. So invite God into every situation, every meeting, every boardroom, every court scenario, whatever your circumstances may be, invite God in and he will meet you there. You just have to open the invitation.
That is brilliant. And I think it's a really great segue to maybe a closing point. But I want to say this unequivocally. I'm always inspired when I think of the people in our community and I think of how hard they work and how good they are at what they do. And you two are one of those who, for me, it inspires me to be better at what I do, to push for not just excellence, but to push for a way of knowing your craft that you can be put on the news and ask really tough questions and you're not anxious, you're not whatever, and you can be clear on it. You can be placed in a scenario where the situation or scenario seems antithetical to whether it might be belief or whatever the hoo-ha is of the day, and you can rock up and be confident, present your case. I think I just take my hat off to both of you, knowing a little bit about your lives and your families and just the people you are. Enjoy your holiday next week. I don't know if people are supposed to know, but she's going on holiday. But I'll say this. One of the things that really inspires me about your profession is this idea of the Constitution and the law. Because my life is about a living, eternal Constitution.
Yeah.
That I constantly need to go to as a lens to everything, like you guys. That approaching all of life through this means I better know this Constitution so well that when I have to navigate a law, when I have to go through case by case, when I have to navigate somebody's life, whether I think they're wrong or they think they're right, but I have a lens that I must work from because I'm standing before the judge at some point. And this person deserves the best of the work I can put together to say, here's what the law says, and it aligns with the Constitution, and you're invited to enter into this in a particular way, or you will experience this in a particular way based on X, Y, Z. So true for all of us. And I think there's something to mirror of what you guys do that every Christian must do. Study this eternal Constitution. Let it breathe in you. Let it interpret all of life. Let it be the sun that arises in the morning that allows you to see the day. Until we see you next week. You guys have been amazing. Bless you.
Thank you.
Listen, I never wanted this one to end. So many questions.
Yeah, no, time went by quite quickly.
I'm like, why? Like, how?
Yeah, I was looking there. I thought the 45 would still be open, and then next thing, this man has scratched out everything already.
I didn't even see there were times there.
Yeah, I didn't see when they were scratching out the.
Okay, time for take 2.
All right, very quick, how did it go?